Good morning. It's morning here. Pretty cold day in St. Louis. Tyler and I were going over the status internally of our Camp Lejeune cases and thought we'd use this opportunity to give you all an update on what's going on with litigation.
So, Tor, you want to start us off? And before we got on this, we were talking about a general update on our conversations with the Department of Justice and some of the JAG attorneys. So, if you want to talk about that.
Sure, there is significant progress. Happy to report. They have sent out an initial round of what are called substantiation requests. So the way the process works is we file the claims with the Department of Navy. The Department of Navy then takes those claims, tries to find deficiencies. If there are no deficiencies, which most of ours are not deficient, they'll then send out substantiation claims. So now you need to tell us more about your claim. That's starting to happen now. And it took some time. The Department of Navy's way behind, right? Tyler, the tech is.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to catch up. They're catching up a little bit. There's still more catching up to do, but they're sending these out. So we have the form. Have you seen it, Tyler? Have you had a chance to lay eyes on it?
Yeah, we've started. I've reviewed it, and we're starting to kind of piece it apart and figure out a way to kind of target it into specific categories. But yeah.
So here's the call to action to all of you out there watching this, and hopefully you are watching this. Someone's going to be in touch with you from our office to work with this substantiation claim to get this information. Even if the Department of Navy has not sent it to you in particular, right? We're going to call you anyway so that we're prepared. So when they do, that we can get it done quickly. Please help us do that. I ask you, I know everybody wants their case to move as quickly as possible. We do as well. Help us get that done. When you get a call, provide that information as best you can. If you don't have it, help us get it. There's ways we can get it as well. That takes a little more time. But please be attentive to when you get a call. They may use the word substantiation. They may say they just want more information, but someone will be in touch with you. And if not, as always, and you have questions, get in touch with us. Email, text, or call us.
Yeah, and I think it's important. One thing I do want to say is we all get restless. We all want to know what's going on. It's perfectly normal and okay for you to reach out. But don't get panicked if you haven't heard something immediately. We are processing these as they come in. We're processing them as we get them from the government. We will reach out. Just because you haven't heard something in a month or a couple of weeks doesn't mean that there isn't work going on. There's a lot of work going on, and we will be in touch. I just don't want anybody to panic because you're seeing this video and you're thinking, I haven't gotten an email yet. There's not one sitting in my inbox. So, work with us. Like Tor said, there's only so much us lawyers can do, and we can do a lot, but we are going to need some information from you as we go to the next step, some biographical information, some factual information, so that we can put together some of the pieces of the puzzle. Tor, I know that one of the things you and Chad have been working on is getting together our experts and kind of analyzing some of that information. You want to tell everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah. We're pretty excited about it as well. We have some of the best experts in the country. One of them may not mean much to a lot of people, but the International Association for Research on Cancer is one of the most important organizations in the world. They meet in France and decide which toxins are cancerous, which other things, foods, chemicals, and the one that we're going to meet with just early February is going to put together for us sort of what I like to call a white paper, okay? Because what's going on right now is the government had its own group called the ATSDR go in and try to look at the toxicity of the water over time and over location. And we have to remember that's a government entity. I've heard a lot of people talk about you don't need lawyers in this situation. Be careful when somebody tells you that that's not true. There's a lot of lawyer work that needs to happen. The government is going to want to rely completely on a government entity that is going to try to decide which cases should be compensated and not. We don't agree with that process. Now, there's some good data that the ATSDR, they're not complete liars. There's some good scientists. There's also some bad scientists. There's some competent work, and there's some work that needs to be challenged. We're in the process of challenging that. So we've got that expert we're meeting with. We've got another expert that's going to look at our specific cases and look at exposure, look at timelines, look at residency, and we're going to put that together. It's very important for people to understand we can't just completely accept what the government tells us, right? And just say, okay, we'll accept that. That's not what we do as lawyers. Sometimes you do. I think the government's going to do the right thing on some of the cases, and that's great. But on the other ones that we need to challenge, we plan to challenge, and we're going to do that through these experts.
Two things I want to follow up with you mentioned. Yep. One is, what is a white paper? You said that, and I bet a lot of people don't know exactly what that is. And two, you mentioned the ATSDR, which is the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. Can you tell a little bit about like what that organization is and how it connects with the government, why it's important?
Yeah, I'll take the first one first. The white paper is sort of just a general, here are the opinions. So what we plan to do is look at all of the different ailments, illnesses, diseases that our clients have for the people we represent. And then we're going to try to put together sort of, here's the exposures and the causation, and here's the picture that can be presented. It's not going to be specific to any one person, right? That's going to be a different analysis. But this is a white paper sort of as a generalized. Here's the situation. Here are the cases that, have this type of causation. Here are some flies in the ointment too. They'll let us know where we have to, work a little harder. But that's what that white paper is going to be. ATSDR is an organization that was created by the government to, in fact, study environmental toxicity in certain areas, in Superfund sites, in other sites, in nuclear sites. And it was the concept of ATSDR, I agree with. I think it's great, right? It is the government trying to take responsibility for oil spills, for other things that might cause toxicity to citizens or to military, servicemen, all those things. So the concept's a good one. You can't do away with the fact that it's still a government entity, right? They're even if their intentions are good, there's a natural bias. Just can't help it. They are the government working for the government, and in this case, it's the government that will end up compensating people. So I challenge that part of it. And then, a lot of the really, really good researchers and scientists go find jobs in the private sector after they've worked with ATSDR. So you just don't take it as the end all be all. You challenge it, and that's what we do as lawyers. We've had other cases that we've done it. You know this, Tyler. We had that nuclear case that we can't talk too much about. There was an ATSDR element, and we challenged it. We just didn't accept it as the end all be all. And that's just what we're used to as a firm, and what we'll continue to do.
So linking something you said previously with everything you just kind of commented on, you talked about experts and you talked about these challenges. And then earlier you mentioned the need for a lawyer. I think this is an important thing to reemphasize because we get a lot of questions from our clients on whether or not they need a lawyer. These experts, these challenges, some of these processes, these are not things that are available to the average citizen who just files a claim on their own, right?
Right.
These are things that we are doing independently as a law firm, that we are seeking out, that we are putting together, that we are challenging.
In fairness, Tyler, I want to add to that. So, and we're going to talk about it, but I was just down in North Carolina and visited Camp Lejeune. And while I was there, I met with a group of lawyers and just very, very impressed. And we were trying to share things that we've learned for the betterment of all of our clients. And just a really impressive group of people that have their hearts and their minds in the right place. And, it's sitting in that room. Frankly, I was sitting in the room with people that are also clients, and I won't disclose names, but they're very important people in this litigation. And they know they need a lawyer, right? They sit in that room and they're inspired. I'm inspired. And we are very serious about trying to do everything we can to make sure that we get the most that we can for all the clients that we have. And yeah, it's funny you say that. I was impressed and inspired being in a room full of really motivated lawyers. And then we went on to visit Camp Lejeune, which was interesting. We can talk about that next.
All right, Tor. So you just got back a little bit ago from Camp Lejeune. You want to tell us about that? Tell us about that visit, what you learned.
So not to elongate this, but I grew up. My dad was 26 years in the Navy, and I grew up until a certain age, 7, 8 years old. I think it was 8, on a Navy base. So going and visiting Camp Lejeune was it was wild, right? A lot of the memories that I have, and things are the same. You know, in the Navy, it's the Navy exchange, and in the Marines, it's the PX, right? So it's the post exchange, but the buildings are the same, right? And what's inside, and then you got your liquor store over on this side, and you know, my parents were great parents, but they knew where that liquor store was. You're not paying tax, and it was cheap, and all these things. It's all these memories were coming back, and I was thinking, where are the little league fields, and you know, and it was nice. It really gave me context to Camp Lejeune, but also let me know that I have kind of a unique understanding of a base, right? In the Marines, a post. So, or a camp. So it was cool in that respect. But it was also really educational and enlightening to understand where everything is, which you can look at a map, right? And you can do all those things, but there's nothing like having the visual. And I was trying to take a bunch of pictures, and learned after about my 7th or 8th one when somebody saw me doing it, because they had somebody come with us from the military. We couldn't just be alone, and so there no pictures. So I'd love to share them, but you know, I feel a little uncomfortable doing that. So, but on a very serious note, learned so much about the way people at the base would live their lives, right? So you have barracks, you have living quarters, you have Tarawa Terrace, you have Hadnot Point, you have Paradise Point, Hospital Point. And I'm not looking at a map, I'm just going by memory of being down there. And you know, Camp Johnson. And you think people that were in some of these places, and what the ATSDR is saying is that some places just the water wasn't dirty, right? The water was fine. And in some places it was bad, and they're willing to admit that. But what I learned is how close the proximity of those places are. What I learned is that the mobility of the soldiers, of the troops, the mobility of the civilians that also worked there, they all came into Hadnot Point where the water was toxic, right? And because that's where the bus station was. And I don't know if Tyler, did you know that before like the 80s, they didn't allow cars.
No, honestly, I didn't know that.
They just started putting in parking lots. They didn't have parking lots. They had a bus system, right? Isn't that interesting? So they had a bus system, or they would walk, but they would walk to where the bowling alley was, where the workout facilities were, where the exchange was, and those are all in that Hadnot Point area, in a toxic area. And they would shower and swim, and drink water, right? And people from camp,
Sure.
all the camp, then bus in. And I wish I could show it to you. Pick my phone up because I wanted to remember how close it is. The bus station was literally right across the street from the Hadnot Point water facility, where all this dirty water was processing from, right? And then all the barracks were just another 100 yards down the road, where thousands of troops lived, and you know, it's just all right there in that area. So it was just an incredible learning experience to put context to it. I now visualize, I see it, and I think it makes me a better lawyer, right, to represent these people. And I hope I can get you down there too. We should try to get on. I bought a T-shirt for you, by the way.
Awesome. All right. So you, if I'm understanding you right, though, then even though the government tries to isolate people and put them in situations and put them into specific locations, and that's information we're going to have to give them, there is a common nucleus that cannot be avoided that everybody was going through, and that exposure is going to derive in some part from.
It's the flow. It's the flow of the people at the place. right? And so you're talking about, in that time frame, those decades that we are talking about, there weren't cars. There were a few. I bet some of the officers had them, right? Because they had driveways, and you can see those, and we'll talk about that in a second. That's as you get sort of into Paradise Point a little bit, is where the officers' club is, and et cetera. But the vast majority of the people there would make their way into that Had Not Point, into what is sort of a town, the central location. And yeah, that was all exposure to toxic water.
Yeah, and I don't want to repeat things, but I think this is an important thing when we were talking about the necessity of lawyers and the necessity of experts. These are things that the government might not necessarily take into account, right? They're going to want to put people in bubbles and isolate their exposures and limit off these things that are the commonality of the community.
Right, right, and that's important. And we need, again, call to action, please. We need your help as clients. These are your cases, and we're going to put them in the best situation we can. But you got to help us provide that information. Were you on the bus, right? Did you go to the bowling alley? Did you go work out? All these things.
Thor, what about the areas that people lived where the government is saying was not toxic, that was generally safe?
Yeah, I plan to challenge that, and I want to make that very clear. As you make your way into sort of the officers area, Tyler, you're coming out of Had Not Point in the officers area, you see houses, right? And it's funny that my dad was a Navy officer, so I lived in housing that was so similar to this. Again, it was bringing back all these memories. But that's a lot of times where families are, right? And we've got a lot of clients who have miscarriages, other birth defects, other birthing issues. And that's a lot of where the families were. Most of the barracks had a lot of bachelors, frankly, during that time frame. Families were over in this area where the government, ATSDR, would tell us that the water was good, right? That's not the case. Okay, that is not what was going on. What I learned and I saw was a little box that has the lever in it, right? That can open up the water from Had Not to get into Paradise Point, to get into these other areas. And that was all over the base. They could use water from one source to feed water into another source. They're taking toxic water and putting it into what they're claiming to be clean water. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
And how many times that happened, we're going to figure out. We got to figure out. Because we know that a lot of people got sick in areas where ATSDR is saying, or had problems with birth in areas where ATSDR is saying the water was clean. Now, interesting, okay? There's 2 golf courses. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did actually. Yes, on that.
2 golf courses, right? They're both in the area where the water was supposed to be clean. And how much water did they use to water those golf courses? So much. And when they deplete the water source in the one, what do they have to do? They have to go get it from somewhere else. Turn the lever. Dirty water coming in. A lot to do. And again, it goes back to Tyler. I'm biased because I am a lawyer, right? But I'm proud of what I do. And this is the stuff we've got to do, to put together for our clients, is because those people that lived in areas that the government is going to say were clean, we're going to show they weren't. I hope. Can't guarantee anything, but that's the work we're trying to do. So I found that fascinating. One last thing, and we'll see where this plays out, but there was an area not far from the exchange where it's like a gas storage facility. Gasoline.
Like barrels?
Barrels.
Or like,
yeah, processing. It was like a processing area. I don't know if it was a refinery. That's why I'm not using that word. I'm not sure exactly what they were doing. But it was to supply gas. And at one point they believed that somebody was stealing the gas because they couldn't find all of this gas. The reality was it was a leak. into the ground. And there is currently again, I took a picture, but I can't show it because I'm not allowed to, but 15 miles of gasoline in the ground, miles. They have, I saw it, they have on the facility a big container, I mean, huge container that is about, when I was there, a third full of gasoline. You know where that's coming from?
Ground.
The ground. They're pulling gas and then they're reusing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. And I don't know whether there's a case there, but it just goes to show you the way we treated, and hopefully it stops. But from a toxicity perspective, the way we treated our military, and we all know that, and hopefully this is progress. It's real progress that the legislation is in place, because that's a showing that they want to do something. But now let's see if the next step happens, and that we turn that legislation into real compensation for the veterans and the other people affected that we represent.
Well said. All right, Tor, I think we've covered everything. I think we've covered your visit, and moving forward. As always, if anybody has any questions, any concerns, please email us or call us. The fastest way to get in touch with us is emailing us at camplejeune@thlawyer.com. You can respond directly to the email that had the hyperlink to this video. But we will continue to keep you updated, and we will continue to fight forward.
Thanks for letting us represent you. It's a true honor, and I mean that sincerely.
Thank you all.